My conversation is going to focus on how we can tap into the non-traditional to empower others to change the world. So before I get started, I thought I would do a brief introduction. I met some of you yesterday, but I thought I could do a little bit of my online dating profile to further introduce myself to you all this morning. So I'm a Pisces. I think that's important to mention because I'm a dreamer. I see a world not for what it is, but I see a world for what it could be. And that's something that drives me every single day, not seeing what is happening right now, but dreaming about what's possible in the future. The second thing is, although I'm not from Cincinnati, I do love living in Cincinnati. This is the Cincinnati flag that's on my chest, and everywhere I go, I'm always representing Cincinnati. In fact, I would say that Cincinnati is the greatest city in America, not because it is right now, but because I hope we can be that in the future. And I'll talk more about Cincinnati here in a second. Number 3, this is not funny. This is a very traumatic thing for me. I'm not Gary Coleman. My dad, when I was in high school, he would think it was really funny to go to the opposing team's bleachers, sit in that team's section, and start Gary Coleman chants. So my dad's a great guy, but he thought it was really funny to get people chanting Gary Coleman. And people actually believed it in some ways when I was a kid. And the fourth thing is I am a co-founder of Mortar. We're in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'll share more about us in a second. And this is Kanye West, my hero. My number one guy. Now, why is Kanye up there? Why is he my hero? Because Kanye is crazy, right? Nobody would argue that he's insane, right? But what does that insanity do for other people like myself? Kanye is so far out there, right? He's so far out there doing crazy stuff that in his wake, he leaves a space for people like me to be like, you know what? I'm not as crazy as Kanye is. So I can do crazy stuff too. I can say crazy things. I can wear a mechanic shirt. I can have tattoos. But guess what? I'm not as crazy as Kanye West is. So I love Kanye for doing that. And in Cincinnati, I believe we're trying to do the same things. We're pushing the envelope. We're pushing boundaries. We're doing things that nobody else has thought about doing. And in our wake, we're giving other people the opportunities to try something crazy, to do something different. I should also mention that one day, Kanye put in a rap song that Yeezy would jump over Jumpman. Now, what does that mean? Kanye used to work as a designer for Nike, and he used to design tennis shoes for Nike. He wanted more creative control of Nike because he thought that his designs could, if given the opportunity, change the world. Nike said, nope, just focus on designing your shoe. Don't worry about anything else. So what did Kanye do? He went to Adidas. Adidas was a fledgling company that had a great brand, but at the time was having declining sales. But Kanye said if they gave him a chance, his ideas, his brand would overtake Jordan. It was released this week that Adidas has overtaken Jordan in sales to be number 2 in the marketplace behind Nike. So despite Kanye's craziness, his ambition, his drive, his creativity has come to pass. His Yeezy brand has overtaken the Jordan brand. So that's why I love Kanye so much, because he's crazy, he's done his thing, and now we see the results of it. So my talk today, as I mentioned, would be about tapping into the non-traditional to change the world. I want to start off with this Bible verse because it is something that has been pounded into my brain. It's something I think about every single day when I wake up and before I go to sleep. It's in Ecclesiastes. It says, as you can read, every living thing has a hope. Even a live dog is better than a dead lion. Why do I love this verse so much? I love it so much for a variety of reasons. One, because internally, a lot of us have doubts about ourselves. We suffer from confidence challenges. We think, how can I possibly do something? This verse, in my opinion, says, as long as there's breath in our lungs, we can go and change the world because we have a hope, because God is with us every step of the way. It's even more revolutionary when we think of the other. Those people like my dad. I shared this story yesterday. My dad was adopted by his high school football coach. My dad, in many ways, was like the blind side, just way less athletic. But I have white grandparents, and they adopted my dad. And my dad got a chance to go to college. He met my mom. The rest is history. I firmly believe that if not for that intervention, I would not be standing here before you guys today. But my dad is like so many people that are out there who are operating underneath the surface, that have the talent, have the capabilities, can do whatever they want to do to change the world, but as a society, we're not identifying and tapping into those people and giving them opportunities. So think about that. What if we're going to our prisons, our homeless shelters, and our schools, and seeing people not for what they are, but for what they could be. Not seeing people that have been previously incarcerated and saying, you've made your decisions. You have your lot in life. You're an other. What if we say that person, if given the opportunity, could change the world? So this is my leadership advice for you all today. And if anything, I think this is also the leadership advice that Jesus had, that God has. Because if you look throughout the Bible, there are so many examples of people that say, why me? Who am I? What could I possibly do? And those are the precise people that God chooses. People like myself, that I would say, I'm not that smart. I'm not that talented. I'm just stubborn. But for whatever reason, God has chosen me, and here I am standing before you all today. So throughout my presentation, I want you all to remember this. Every living thing has a hope. Even a live dog is better than a dead lion. We have embodied this Bible verse in Cincinnati and through Mortar, and in my opinion, it started to change our entire city. So Cincinnati, greatest city in America, has some significant problems. How do we want to solve that problem? Now, again, I'm not saying that our particular strategy is the best strategy or that it's going to work for everybody else, but it's the one that we've chosen in Cincinnati and one I think has been particularly effective in supporting and empowering God's people. So as you can see on the far left, African Americans are being left behind in significant ways. We're one of the worst cities in America for entrepreneurship, and we have one of the worst child poverty rates in America. As much as I pray for folks in Cincinnati, as much as I want to join protests, as much as I want to put a mean social media post on Facebook, I've learned that hasn't been enough. Something else has to be done. And in our opinion, well, I'll get to that in a second. I'll extrapolate that to our country. As we see here at the bottom, household net worth gaps have continued to increase, which means that folks are continually being left behind. Those folks that I mentioned before could change the world if given the opportunity, are not being reached. That talent is not being harnessed. In the case of business ownership and entrepreneurship, this is particularly important because the Kauffman Foundation had a study that said, on average, it costs $30,000 to start a business. If it costs $30,000 to start a business, let's say we're right here, how can Hispanic and African American households hope to compete when household income is at the level that it is today? You make one mistake. If one thing goes wrong, you lose your shirt, you lose your business, everything, could potentially fall apart. And I personally have a problem with that. Our organization has a problem with that. So I want to talk to you guys about something called the pre-mental cognitive commitment. What does that mean? The pre-mental cognitive commitment says that we as human beings jump to conclusions without having all the data available to us. To give you a really easy example of that, let's say we're driving here this morning and somebody cuts us off. What's the first thing that goes through our head? That person's a jerk, right? That person's terrible. We jump to conclusions. Or we'll see a person and they may react very short. Maybe they say something that isn't very appropriate. And our brains naturally jump to conclusions without having all the data available to us. This has, in my opinion, some severe, significant consequences to our society. I did some research one day because I'm a really weird person, and sometimes I'll wake up on Sunday mornings, I'll start on one Wikipedia page, and by the end of that few hours, I'll find myself, who knows where I'll find myself, but I'm off on a rabbit trail. I'm a really weird person. One morning, I found myself looking up all the different uses for a pair of shoes, right? Why is this important? We see a pair of shoes, their pre-mental cognitive commitment says, what are shoes? We put them on, they help us get from point A to point B while protecting our feet from rocks and sticks and things like that. There are 21 that I found different uses for a pair of shoes. 21. Let's say you're walking in a dark alley at night, your pair of shoes could be a weapon. You could throw it at someone, right? Let's say this room is really breezy, your shoe could be a paperweight. One night, I had a bottle of wine and no bottle opener. My shoe was a bottle opener. That's a real one. I promise you it works, right? There are all these different uses for a pair of shoes that we don't even think about because of the pre-mental cognitive commitment. I think you all know where I'm going with this. Same thing happens with people. We'll see a person, and we'll say, that person has done X, Y, and Z. That person can never do whatever else. And it prevents them from fulfilling whatever goal that they have or whatever God wants them to be. Because as human beings, we think that person can only do X, Y, and Z. And I'll give you some examples of that. This guy on the far left, his name is Marcus Pitts. Marcus was in our most recent class. And when I say class, I'll talk about what that means here in a second. But Marcus was incarcerated as a kid. He made some bad decisions. He actually just came to our office the other day and said one of his childhood friends was just murdered this week. His household is still in transition. But Marcus got out of prison, and he wanted to turn his life around. He couldn't get a job because of his record. He couldn't really go anywhere because of his record. So he decided, well, I'll go to culinary school, I'll get a degree, and then maybe I'll find a job somewhere. He has found a job somewhere, but it's washing dishes. It's not doing things that he thinks fulfills his heart's and his life's ambition. So he came to Morton and said, well, maybe I can start a business using my skills in the culinary school to transform my own life and that of my family. So we won our pitch night this past week, and Marcus is going to start a business at a pop-up stand that Mortar owns and operates, opening this fall. So through business, Marcus's life is going to be forever changed. But what if we said, well, Marcus, your criminal record means you're not qualified to be in our program. The life decisions you've made means that you can't do X, Y, and Z. Then this light that is now shining so brightly may be extinguished. If you came to our pitch night and saw Marcus give his presentation in front of his family members, you would have thought he was performing in front of the Atlanta United, right? People were so excited to see him pitch his idea, to taste his food, to be a part of his story. And now his life is forever changed because we are saying yes when the rest of the world might be saying no. The same thing applies to Naya in the middle. Naya came to us in our very first class. Naya, at the time, was shelterless. She was living in a halfway house. But Naya had a vision where she could provide vegan, vegetarian, Jamaican soul food. It's a mouthful, but let me tell you, it's also delicious. She'd come to class and she'd bring this different vegan dishes, and I'd be like, maybe put that on the other side of the room because I don't think it'd be very good. But I promise you guys, her food is amazing. And through Mortar, she went from being shelterless to having a permanent home, to not just having a catering business focusing on this food. She also has a line of coconut water-based juices. She's now talking to Whole Foods about piloting in the Cincinnati region. She went from being shelterless to now having a business that is in negotiations with Whole Foods. That's incredible, right? If we didn't say yes to her because of her past decisions, she wouldn't be here today. That light that she now that's shining so brightly may have been extinguished. And then Kristen Bailey on the right, she was working at a bank, corporate job, but she loves barbecues. I love barbecue too. There's a great barbecue place down the street. Just had it yesterday. But Kristen wanted to have her own business. She came to Mortar. We helped her get a loan. We helped her start a food truck. And this summer, she just opened her first brick and mortar location. We are saying yes when the rest of the world will say no. Why? Because every living thing has a hope. Even a live dog is better than a dead lion. I like to make this joke sometimes that black people invented Uber. Why do I say that? Because Mortar is located right next to a Kroger across the street. Ours is an urban Kroger. So there are a lot of folks that are outside, hanging out and, we'll say loitering. But every time I walk by that Kroger, I'm always asked for a ride. Hey, you need a ride somewhere? You need a ride somewhere? I consider that ride sharing, right? They're sharing their ride to take me somewhere. In my opinion, those folks could have invented Uber, but guess what? They were not connected to the tools and resources that were needed to start that business, to have the Uber that's on maybe a lot of our phones. Maybe we use Lyft, maybe, hopefully. But that same concept could have been started by those folks that are living on the corner or standing on the corner at that Kroger right next to Mortar's office. And again, that is all across our country. Folks that have great ideas but are not being connected to the tools and resources because of how they look, how they talk, how they behave. But that's not, in my opinion, what the Bible says. As long as there's breath in their lungs, they have a hope. And us as Christians should do everything we can to support, encourage, empower them to lead. Because that, in my opinion, is where the next generation of leadership comes from. So this is what Mortar does. This will be really brief. On the far left, we provide culturally competent technical assistance to support non-traditional, disadvantaged entrepreneurs. It goes 12 weeks. We provide access to legal support, access to coaches from an organization called SCORE. It stands for the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And in all reality, we're just saying yes. The folks are coming to us And our median income from our classes is $23,000. 90% of them are African American, so there's a lot of barriers, a lot of insecurities that they're bringing to class with us. And we're starting off by saying yes. Yes, you can do this. Yes, your idea has value. Yes, we will be with you every single step of the way to help you be successful. And I talked about this yesterday, this idea of failure, right? A lot of people are afraid to fail because of the shame, because of whatever it might be. But we're trying to turn around what the idea of failure is, because failure can be a good thing. I failed more times than I can count. And that's okay, right? Fail forward. Learn from your mistakes. Find out how you can get on a path to help you be more successful. We're trying to take the stigma out of failure by continually saying yes despite whatever is happening. We also have storefronts located in disadvantaged neighborhoods where people can test their ideas in real time. Again, taking the stigma out of failure. We have 2 pop-up spaces right now. One is in a neighborhood called Over the Rhine, and the other one is in another neighborhood called Walnut Hills. And again, it's in a vibrant commercial corridor where on one hand, entrepreneurs can learn how to test their ideas. On the other hand, a community that's changing can see other entrepreneurs looking like them, running businesses where they call home. So it can improve the morale of that neighborhood so that they can maybe see themselves opening a business as well. And then, as I mentioned with Marcus, we're opening a food pop-up space in October, which is in a new bar that's opening in Over the Rhine. It'll give our food entrepreneurs a chance to also test their ideas in a space. So we're really excited about that pop-up activity. The final one is around creative financing. And I'm wearing a hat right now because I'm losing my hair. But this is the one thing that makes me the most excited and also the most stressed out. We had a guy named Anton Kennedy who was in our program. He's in our 3rd class. And Anton was in prison for 7 years for heroin trafficking. He has tattoos all over his face, tattoos over his body. And he got out of prison, and he wanted to turn his life around. He wanted to start a nonprofit that supports families with an incarcerated parent. And the problem was that once he started that nonprofit, nobody would donate money to him. So he had to generate some earned revenue somehow. So we decided he would start selling apparel, T-shirts, hats, all kinds of things. So to get that off the ground, he used our pop-up space. I'll never forget, it was his 2nd time on the pop-up space. He had these new shirts, and he was so excited to show me these new shirts that he had gotten. He pulls the first shirt out of the box, and guess what? One word on this shirt was misspelled. One word on this shirt is misspelled. So now Anton has a moral dilemma on his hands. Does he sell a shirt that has a misspelling that could potentially dilute the quality of his brand? So a person that's never heard of Anton will walk into this space, see this misspelled shirt, and because of the pre-mental cognitive commitment would think, Anton's not a good business person. Anton's this, Anton's that. I'm not going to support Anton's business. Because it's something we all do as human beings. Or does Anton say, I don't want to delete the quality of my brand, so I'm just not going to sell these shirts anymore. The consequences of him not selling those shirts could be catastrophic for his family because the sales from that shirt was going to support his family at home. So one mistake, this huge moral dilemma. So Anton says, Derrick, what do I do? Can Mortar give me a loan? Can Mortar help me? At the time, we couldn't because we didn't have the capacity to provide loans. And in my infinite idealism, in my faith in God providing, I thought, well, you know what? We'll start a fund, right? We'll raise some money so that Anton or anybody else who goes through the same experience that all of us have gone through when we make a mistake doesn't have to deal with that again. So we have raised some money, $350,000 from people just like us. $50,000 actually came from a church to provide friends and family capital for entrepreneurs who don't have access to capital. As you saw in that very first slide, minority populations don't have access to capital, accountants, attorneys, all those things. So Mortar, in many ways, had to step into that friends and family role, and one way we're doing that is through providing access to capital. And this is our theory of change. I'll just go right through that. This is what I'm really, really proud of because it shows the proof is in the pudding, right? Every living thing has a hope. Even a live dog is better than a dead lion. Translates into real economic impact for our region. We're saying yes because I believe God tells us to say yes. And as a result of that, you can see the proof is in the pudding. We've raised $350,000 from people just like you and me to support disadvantaged entrepreneurs. This is grants. These folks are not expecting a return. And again, my parents grew up in poverty. I'm not from Cincinnati. I'm just stubborn. I went door to door, knocking on doors, annoying people to death, and they came and they stepped up. And they stepped up to the tune of that much, which I'm really proud of. We had 25 applications when our first class started in January of 2015. We have 519 applications today. We had our first class in January. Our 12th and 13th classes start next week, right? So something is happening in Cincinnati. Our core completion rate is 96%. They told us to expect 20% people dropping out. We're only seeing 4% dropout rate because we're saying yes. And here you can see they're going out, they're creating jobs, they're changing their own trajectory and the trajectory of those around them. We started in one neighborhood, and now we're in 5, a 6th in January, and we're thinking about scaling to other cities across the country. And this is pretty cool too. In this year alone, our graduates would generate $1 million in revenue for our region. $1 million in revenue because we are saying yes. And there is some real tangible value in doing that. So this is another thing I wanted to show you guys because there's some things you can't measure. This is from a couple weeks ago where we had we do these alumni induction ceremonies for our classes that graduate. And our 10th and 11th classes just graduated a couple of weeks ago. So our alumni, they get these cool alumni shirts. We always invite them to come out and to welcome this next class into the Mortar family because that's what it is. It's a family. And this is a picture from that most recent graduation that we had. Now, if you see this, you'll see babies, you'll see kids, you'll see young adults, you'll see people that are a little bit more seasoned. It's an intergenerational movement that we're creating in Cincinnati. We'll say 5 years ago, maybe folks didn't see themselves actively participating. Maybe folks didn't see themselves running a business or actually providing something that other people would really want. But now because of Mortar, well, hopefully because of us and our influence, people's lives are being changed. And this is one thing that will never show up in a spreadsheet, something that will never show up, on a data sheet that people will ask you for. But there is a true qualitative impact that we're also seeing in Cincinnati. I like to say that Mortar is like cardboard. I think the church is like cardboard in a lot of ways also. What does that mean? I saw this woman gardening in Cincinnati, and she was putting down fresh, I think it's called topsoil. I'm not a gardener. But she also had cardboard on top of it. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, why is there cardboard? And she says, I haven't tested this. She said that cardboard activates the soil underneath it. It brings the earthworms to the surface, and it fertilizes that soil. And then flowers are more likely to blossom because of that cardboard. In my opinion, Mortar and the church is like that cardboard. We activate the surface so that the earthworms and everything else underneath it can come to the surface and fertilize that soil, and then everything else can blossom. And this, in my opinion, and it's kind of cool, we're all kind of like flowers, is the blossoming, of that cardboard on the surface. So I want to end with this. I had the privilege of going to Paris in April. My brother's in the Army, and I got a chance to see him. We went to Paris together. And we were standing in line to see the Notre Dame Cathedral. And when we were in line, we were reading this tourism book. And in the book, it talked about how the cathedral was built not by skilled builders or architects. It was built by commoners, people like us in this room, people that spent their blood, sweat, and tears hauling stone all across the city to lay the foundation for that church. And it took hundreds of years for it to finally be completed. Those folks that laid the foundation, they built that foundation knowing they would never see that church completed. In my opinion, we're laying the foundation knowing we will never see the ends of what we're all trying to complete. But does that mean that we don't haul that stone every single day? Does that mean we don't invest our blood, sweat, and tears every single day knowing we will never see the completion of the work that we're doing? Of course not, right? But it's so important that us in this room work every single day, hauling that stone, investing everything we can for the future generation. Because if we don't, who knows what will happen next? So that's my presentation. Here's my information. I'm all out of business cards. I'm sorry about that. I'm a bad entrepreneur. And that's my story.